Hey, let's take a look at one of the other top classes in the country.
Where are we going?
Currently the number 3 class in America. We're live right now, and it is right around 5 Eastern time for our folks in the Eastern time zone. Ohio State. When we started our live show, Josh, for the National Signing Day coverage, again, on the Recruits channel, go follow that. Go subscribe to that. Get dialed in. Josh crushing the coverage pretty much every single day when it comes to what's going on over there and keeping you locked in recruiting all year long. But Ohio State, Josh, we started the live show.
Yeah.
And as soon as we went on the air, they lose a big-time wide receiver in Jeremiah McClellan. He flips from Ohio State to Oregon. And so you're kind of looking down the barrel of what's left. You're like, well, Eddrick Houston, there's a lot of smoke around him flipping to Bama. Yeah. Jeremiah Smith, like you're just holding your breath the entire time in Columbus. Not one, but both of those individuals end up sticking. That's massive, is it not?
When that happened, if that was going to be a tone setter for the day. I'm sure Ohio State fans were in a bit of a panic to wake up to the first big news of the day is Jeremiah McClellan flipping his commitment to Oregon. You wonder, oh, well, we're hearing all these things about Eddrick. We're hearing all these things about Jeremiah. Is this the way our signing day is going to go? But, you know, they didn't go in a nosedive. They still had Milan Graham committed with Jeremiah Smith, 2 elite wide receivers. It would have been great to bring in a Jeremiah McClellan with them, but it does not break the class. And then they correct things, right? Eddrick Houston ends up sticking, which – we had the great Chad Simmons in here in the morning, and when he walked into the office, he felt like it was a surefire flip. A little bit before, things change again, and it looks like he's sticking. And ultimately, when he goes to sign that piece of paper, nobody knew if it was going to be Ohio State or Alabama. It is Alabama. And in the end, they get their defensive lineman because they really couldn't afford to lose another 5-star defensive lineman. Justin Scott, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, flips from Ohio State to Miami.
Yep.
And they really needed that Eddrick Houston signature, and they got it today.
The fact that big edge, Eddrick Houston, stuck with Ohio State, and I think Chad said this on the air, he had a source that told him 99% it was going to be Bama. 99%.
Yeah.
Just takes that 1%.
Yeah.
Just took the 1% for them to get it done. They went full end game there and landed Eddrick Houston at the 11th hour. It was big.
I think some of these reports leaking out kind of tipped Ohio State off to what was about to happen. And because of those reports happening early, Ohio State was able to jump on and kind of put out a fire.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they went full throttle. They said, not like this. Full Dora the Explorer mode, swiper, no swiping. Not just Eddrick Houston, but also on Jeremiah Smith. Now, Eddrick Houston, there was probably a little less optimism, if that's fair to say. Jeremiah Smith had been committed for a while and, held the test of time all the way up to signing day. Still a fair amount of anxiety for both sides.
Yeah.
But to land the number 1 player in the country, Josh, and Jeremiah Smith, kind of similar to Georgia. If you want to play wide receiver at the NFL level and you want to have a chance to, win Biletnikoff Awards at the collegiate level, there's one place you go. And it starts with a C and ends with Columbus, So, I mean, that was a massive get. Any surprise there with Jeremiah Smith sticking? I know there's buzz, but what was the level of surprise with him sticking with Ohio State?
I think if you were on the Ohio State side of this, I think you were pretty confident that you were very confident that Jeremiah Smith was going to stick to Ohio State. And then if you were on the other side of this, if you were a Miami fan, if you were a Florida fan, if you were a Florida State fan, I think that you felt a pretty good chance to flip him. So, we see that a lot in recruiting, but in the end, Jeremiah Smith stayed true to his word. He committed to Ohio State for a reason. He said all along that there would be a, quote, final decision being made, and he went into December 20 signing day and made that final decision to stick to Ohio State.
Which is wild because anytime you hear the words final decision,
doesn't sound
that
good.
Typically means like, hey, I still got to make a decision. And if I'm picking you at this point in time, I'm committed to a certain place, but my final decision is yet to be made. I don't feel great about that from Ohio State. And so both Eddrick Houston and Jeremiah Smith, here's the other thing, Josh. Both those guys in SEC territory.
Sure.
Eddrick Houston in the state of Georgia, Jeremiah Smith obviously in the Sunshine State of Florida. Absolutely massive for their brand to go in there, take who they want, and be able to say, you know what, these guys are coming with us to the Big Ten. The class, itself is just not even a rebuild, but a reload when it comes to the Buckeyes.
Hey, you got to battle out. If you want to sign an elite recruiting class, you got to get into the South and duke it out with some of the top teams in the South, like a Miami, like a Florida State, like a Georgia, like an Alabama. Those are the teams that you're just going to have to deal with, and they do a great job of it. Ohio State's no stranger to coming into South Florida and taking some of the best prospects out. It's never easy. Nobody said it was going to be easy, but Ohio State does it again.
You want to beat the big dogs on the field, you got to beat the big dogs on the recruiting trail. Ohio State did a good job doing that. A couple other notes here on the Buckeyes, man. it is very rare for a 5-star wide receiver not to get as much publicity during National Signing Day. Mylan Graham also is committed in this class for Ohio State. He is, of course, signed to the Buckeyes. And I mean, Eddrick Houston and Jeremiah Smith have gotten most of the talking points, but he's signed with Ohio State, a 5-star caliber guy. Aaron Nolan, a 4-star quarterback. A couple of other big-time corners, Bryce West and Aaron Scott Jr. Like, this class is built really solid all the way around, Josh.
Yeah, we're really high on Mylan Graham. He comes out of the state of Indiana. He goes 6'1", 185 pounds, electric wide receiver, great with the ball in his hands. And we have him ranked as the number 5 ranked wide receiver in the country, 14 overall. So we're talking top 1% of 1% here, JD, but you're right. You know, he never wavered. He didn't say much, and Mylan Graham kind of flies under the radar as this 5-star receiver that they signed. And he's going to always be kind of a footnote next to Jeremiah Smith until he can go out and be a first-round pick like everybody else that goes to Ohio State.
Absolutely massive to have that kind of talent in your recruiting class.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.